because I have a tendency to root for the team that beats the Packers because it sort of softens the blow. It makes it feel like it was meant to be. But I hate Tom Brady and do not want him to win another Super Bowl.
Well, he did go to Michigan, so there's that. But his winning downgrades Bill Belichick, which is a good thing. On the other hand, if Mahomes win, it proves that the Browns are the second best team, and indeed would have been the best team, except for a missed call head-to-head tackle on Higgins at the close of the first half. Not that I'm bitter.
You sound very bitter. I'm with you on that call. My wife is a Michigan grad, so perhaps she'll be rooting for Tom Brady.
Okay, we won't get you into further trouble. Talk to me about reconciliation. Last night, Joe Manchin goes on to Brett Baer. By the way, side question: do you watch Special Report with Brett Baer?
Occasionally, I do.
I think it's the last news show in America. I really do. Democrats and Republicans come on. I don't know if Brett Baer votes Republican or Democrat. He just asked good question. Manchin comes on last night and he says very reassuring things. He's not going to screw with the Bird rule. $15 minimum wage is not in there. We're going to use reconciliation, but if it doesn't have bipartisan support, he's not voting for it. What do you make of that?
Well, I think Senator Manchin is sincere. I had an opportunity to have dinner with him last night, and he's a very honest guy, and he is genuine when he talks about his dedication to bipartisanship. That is a core issue for him, and he very much wants to restore the bipartisan nature of Congress in general and the Senate in particular. And so I'm inclined to take him at his word. I think he feels very strongly about this and feels very strongly that the approach that the Biden administration is taking so early on here is the wrong approach. I mean, pushing through a nearly $2 trillion relief package with no Republican input. It seems like they completely dismissed the group of 10 Republican senators that engaged in good faith earlier this week. I think is the wrong approach, particularly since we don't yet know if the nearly the $1 trillion we spent recently has been fully spent. Right? We don't have a sense of what worked, what didn't work. I am on board with the idea of providing more resources for vaccine production and distribution. I think that is the best thing we can do, not only to save lives, but to get us out of this economic mess. But the fact is, we have not spent the full $1 trillion that we passed about a month ago, and I think it would be reckless for us to ram through this purely partisan approach that's going to have a lot of things that are completely unconnected to coronavirus relief in it, that are purely progressive priorities. So I hope Senator Manchin continues this fight. It's interesting that we now have two Joes in Washington, D.C. that effectively have a veto.
Yeah, well, I read his, and tell me if it's consistent with the dinner. He doesn't need 60 votes. He's all right with going with reconciliation, but he's not going to violate the Bird rule, and he needs Republicans on whatever goes in. So that's a double. So it's somewhere between the filibuster and a reconciliation, but it's got the guardrails of the Bird rule, meaning don't bring your $15 minimum wage, don't bring DC statehood. We're not doing any of that kind of stuff. Do you expect there will be tax hikes, which would be ruinous with the economy as it is?
I do. I guess I'm getting a bit pessimistic about all this because I do think there's a sense within the Democratic Party right now that this is really their only opportunity to go big or go home over the next 2 years. I mean, technically, they'll get 2 or 3 bites at the reconciliation apple if you look at how this might play out. But I think they feel like they have, 1 or 2 big swings here, and they have to swing for the fences in order to have any hope of winning in the midterm and in 2022. And again, I just think it would be a mistake to interpret the results of the November election as giving them a sweeping mandate for progressive reform. If anything, I think the verdict that the country delivered is that it wants a more moderate path forward. We made incredible gains in the House. Republicans did. There was a lot of split ticket voters who may have voted for Biden, but still voted for a Republican senator or a Republican congressman or congresswoman lower on down the ballot. And so I think the country is sending the signal that we don't want a radical shift in a different direction. We want to get out of the coronavirus mess as quickly and as responsibly as possible. But hey, the economy was going gangbusters prior to that. Most Wisconsinites I talked to liked the fact that they were earning more money. And what we've learned perhaps more than anything else in the pandemic, besides the dangers of being dependent on the Chinese Communist Party, is that Americans need to work. Americans need to work not only as a matter of providing for their family, but as a matter of feeling connected to their community, which is why some of these executive orders, particularly killing the Keystone Pipeline, which is going to cost Wisconsin 2,000 jobs, and these are union jobs, high-paying jobs, jobs that make you way more than $15 an hour. It is just so counterproductive, and the argument being made to support it is so disingenuous.
Well, yeah, and Manchin didn't like that, and John Tester didn't like that. But here's where you're right that reconciliation, they'll get two bites at the apple. They'll get reconciliation this year and reconciliation next year. I thought if Democrats were rational, they would spend all the money this year to get a boom and then put the big taxes in next year so that the consequences of those are not felt until after the election. Because the big tax hikes that you could pass in 2022 would be felt at the end in Q1 2023 when people get the bill. And therefore, they might escape. If they put taxes in right now, they're asking for a recession. I mean, they'll get a recession.
100%. And I think the mistake is that you're going to get a second quarter boom if you're focused on a responsible reopening of the economy, improving some of the vaccine distribution issues that we've seen, which has been a mess in states like mine. If you're focused on allowing kids to go back to school so their parents can in turn go to work. I mean, those are sort of the fundamental building blocks of an economic boom that will happen somewhere around June or July due to a combination of improved vaccination and natural infection. So I don't think you need to go down this path of a massive economic stimulus, given the massive stimulus we've already done, and given the fact that we can start to see the light at the end of the coronavirus tunnel.
Unless they raise marginal income taxes.
Yes.
And if they raise the corporate tax rate, which they will do, and the capital gains tax, which they will do, they're going to step on their own story. Now, I don't know if that matters to Bernie and AOC. We will see. When you talked to Joe Manchin, did you talk about getting a top line increase for DOD?
We did not talk about that. Most of our conversation was less policy focused, but it's important. I mean, we had numerous testimony from various secretaries of defense over the last 4 years saying at a minimum we need to maintain 3 to 5% real growth in the DoD budget, and I'm just very concerned that DoD is going to be looked at as the bill payer for domestic progressive priorities over the next 4 years, and that would be a huge mistake. And oh, by the way, Hugh, to connect this to our earlier conversation, I mean, one thing that could mess up your attempt at an economic boon is stumbling into some foreign conflict because you created a permissive environment that either Russia or China or Iran decides to test. And so the two are intimately connected, and it would be a mistake to think we can save money by cutting DoD's budget, because time and again we've seen that is a counterproductive and very dangerous approach.
Let me play for you one part of Jen Psaki at the White House podium yesterday, cut number 9.
Soon. May I ask whether the president has made a decision on keeping the scope of Space Force?
Wow, Space Force. It's the plane of today. It is an interesting question. I am happy to check with our Space Force point of contact. I'm not sure who that is. I will find out and see if we have any update on that.
What'd you make of that, Congressman Mike Gallagher, as you're a veteran?
It came off as very condescending and somewhat insulting, I think, to the members of Space Force, who right now are working very hard to do something very difficult, which is stand up a new branch of the armed services in a domain that is going to be increasingly important for geopolitical competition. And if that's the approach that the Biden administration is going to take to emerging threats and military modernization, well, we are in for a very, very rough ride. So, I hope that they can be a little bit more humble going forward and a little bit more forward-leaning in terms of these very necessary innovations we're making within DoD.
Just imagine Jen Psaki at the start of the internet age being asked about the web, or at the start of the tank. The tank, sure, no more infantry. Or being asked about railroads back when the Iron Horse was new. I mean, it was really condescending and insulting to people who spend their entire lives trying to keep America safe.
I totally agree with that. Now, we don't want to get into the whole space laser conspiracy that's out
Well,
there, Hugh, which
no,
is
we
a
don't. You're
separate
going to get
issue,
into that
but-
today, aren't you?
That's right.
That's the
we might be
conference.
getting into that with our conference meeting this afternoon, which will be fun. Very fun.
All right. Enjoy, Congressman Mike Gallagher. We'll talk to you next week after we have a Super Bowl winner not named, the Green Bay Packers. And we'll talk about Packers relief another time. Thank you, Congressman. Every week, friends, from now until next year.